On this episode of AV Week, CEDIA has a brand new CEO. We're going to talk about control code licensing and corporate reorganization. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
AV Week is brought to you by our fine group of underwriters, companies like Crestron. This is AV Week, episode 213, recorded Friday, September 18th, 2015. You break it, you bought it.
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us this week from London, Ontario, Canada, weighing in at 125 pounds soaking wet, Matt the Anvil Scott. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I feel like I should be a boxer now, though.
I was actually more going for the wrestling in the Bret Hart era, so.
Well, that is very kind of you.
Yeah, so considering he is from Canada.
And I love the 125 pounds.
Well, you know.
I thought it was 125 kilos.
I'm sorry, 125 kilos. What is that in pounds?
A lot.
Okay.
That's a lot.
All right, that other voice that you hear if you're not watching the video is Mr. Bradford Benn. He is, of course, the digital janitor of AVNation, but more importantly, where his paycheck comes from is Harmon. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. How are you?
I am fabulous.
I shouldn't ask how you are because you're injured, so I'm just going to take.
You know what? More people listen to this podcast and watch it, and I was going to just try to avoid that whole subject.
So, for those of you who can't see the podcast, Tim is in a full body cast. His one arm is free, which is how he's running the mouse, and then the rest of it, Michelle's behind him, and he's basically pushing him around in a cart, kind of like Hannibal Lecter, but he doesn't have the face mask on, and it's really a good look for you, though, Tim.
Okay.
I just want to know, can we come down and sign the cast?
You can sign the cast. No, all right. So I do not have a cast. Nothing's broken, right?
Oh, that's right. It's a big
your pride.
Except for my pride, yes, because 2 nights ago. So here's what we got. We have we had an old rocking chair in my home that decided it was time to give up the ghost and end its life, and it decided at the very moment that I sat down in it that was the time to give up the ghost and end life. So we have hardwood floors in a lot of my house, and so I sat down and the chair went bye-bye, and I landed full on, darn near 300 pounds of me straight on my elbow, and I have what is called a sprained elbow.
As opposed to me when I did it 20 years ago, for those of you who can see the video, took the chunk out of my elbow that's missing a piece of bone after 20 plus years. I didn't go to the hospital. I just rubbed some dirt on it. It wasn't until like 2 days later when I went, it's really not getting any better. And the doctor goes, do you know you're missing a piece of bone? So, I feel your pain. Matt's just making fun of you. I'm at least.
Well, I am. My elbow's fine, but I figured I'd tape it up. So Tim
that was very nice of you. Yes, thank you.
Granted, if we're discussing this, I have a crack from there to about here in my forearm that I left for about a month. And
this isn't the only injury I've ever had. I've never broken a bone, which is very nice.
No, it takes the fun right out of it. You're not even trying.
No.
But Matt, I thought you were wearing that in solidarity with all your broken Cowboys.
Ooh.
Wow.
I didn't wrap my foot.
Okay.
Yeah, we won. It's all right.
Yeah. The year's still young.
It is.
Oh, yeah. And we have tons of time to screw this up.
No, so do the Bears.
We're
All right.
Today.
It was proven last night, for those of you who watch American football, by the, the Chiefs versus
the Broncos versus Chiefs.
Yes.
Deciding to share the ball more than they should have.
Yes.
An awful lot of sharing. It was a very nice gesture, though, how much they shared.
Now, one of the things, speaking of sharing, we should share with our audience is Tim is solely going to be throwing up softballs this week, while Matt and I pontificate, because I've taken over the episode.
Yes.
As
Well,
usual.
except for
When
one
Tim
thing. Except for one thing, and I'm going to take it back for just 2 seconds, because we're going to do some industry news really quickly, because this came down this morning.
That up as a question of what do we think about it?
Well, it does. But here's the thing. So the news of the week is there is a new CEO at CEDIA. A couple months ago, CEDIA announced that they were looking for a new CEO.
And there's no truth to the rumor that I turned it down.
Oh, that is true, that you did not turn it down. But the new head is Vin Bruno. And if you've been around the industry for any amount of time and had any interaction with Crestron, you know Vin. Vin's a great guy, right? Vin is probably one of the nicest people that I have met in this industry. And they announced, CEDIA sent out a press release this morning announcing Vin as the new head of CEDIA. We did reach out to Crestron for kind of a somewhat of a statement. We got one actually just 30 seconds ago. It says basically, we think that CEDIA has made a great decision to make Vin its next CEO. We are proud of Vin. We think he will be very successful and do a great job. End quote from Crestron. So, Matt, we'll start with you on this one because you're the CEDIA guy than either Matt, Bradford or I. Good move by CEDIA.
I think it's a great move. Vin's one of those guys who, especially when I really started to actually get involved in the industry, he was one of the people that was always open to chat, whether it was via social or at a trade show or whatnot. He was very, very quick to, just bring you into the fold and make you feel important, whether you were or not. And let's be honest, sometimes I'm not. Like today when I'm here with you guys.
You're just not important by association.
Well, we're going with that. That's what I'm hoping for. That's why I hang out with Brad so much. But
that's why I hang out with Brad.
Smarter.
Pretty much. But as far as CEDIA bringing on Vin, I think it's a good move. I'm glad that they brought in somebody who is very, very energetic and excited and personable. He's got some great business sense. I think he'll do a fabulous job. But I really appreciate the fact that they brought on somebody who should be very effective at helping to build the CEDIA brand. Because as we know, both for CEDIA and Infocom, we need, especially as people involved in it who sell off that notoriety, we need those brands built stronger. We need them to be more forward-facing outside of the industry, beyond the industry to the end users, because that's what makes those industries effective for us as dealers and members. So I think Vin was a great move.
All right, Mr. Benn, when it comes to moving from a manufacturer to more of a association, right? I mean, this would be the equivalent of you, all joking aside, you being the new head of Infocom. Is this, how difficult of a transition do you think that would be?
Actually, I think it's a pretty big one because when you're marketing for a brand, your key number one job, despite what everyone says, is to help bring more money into said brand. Whereas at CEDIA, your key number one job is to help make people more aware of the industry that you're representing. So it does take a slightly different approach. Also, the other difference, and this is more from my external experience working on boards, is it's difficult to run a company or a trade organization that's staffed by volunteers. To be honest, you can't say, hey, you need to get this to me by Monday or you're fired because, well, I'm a volunteer. I'm doing this. I'm on vacation. What do you do? So I think that's going to be a big change. But I do think bringing in an industry, an industry person is a good move for the company of CEDIA to help foster the brands and make it more attractive and explain to people why they need CEDIA. I think trade industries in general are a good thing because it's kind of why can't I just put a boom box in the corner for my jewelry store, or when I'm at home, why do I want to put in Apple TV in every room and run good network cable? I think the industry itself is a good thing. I do think Vin will be a good advocate for the technologies.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, one of the things that he was not in charge of, but one of the things he was involved in way back when, he was one of the first champions, along with George Tucker, who is again my right side of my brain here at AVNation. But George was at
Isn't that the
Crestron.
side you hit on the ground when you fell?
It is the side I hit on the ground. Yeah, sorry. But George and Vin were one of the first guys at Crestron to start doing the social media. Way back. I mean, back in when Twitter first came out in 06 and 07. That was Vin is a very forward-thinking guy when it comes to marketing, when it comes to brand awareness. I think he's going to do really, really well. I'm very excited. Very excited. I mean, and CEDIA, not for nothing, CEDIA is next month. So you get to meet, the new CEO. We're working with the folks there. We will be doing a live podcast of AVWeek at CEDIA next month, Mr.
Aren't you
Scott.
hosting a panel while you're there at CEDIA that you forgot about in your drug-addled state?
I am hosting a panel. If you are a CSP, then, and that's a Crestron service provider, on Thursday, October 15th from 3 to 5 p.m. is the CSP meeting at CEDIA Expo 2015. And there will be a panel discussion moderated by Tim Albright of AVNation. Adapt, change, and grow. That sounds cool. It features CSP Advisory Board member Bob Horn, Tom Fisher, and Tom Milpacker of Infusebox. So, yeah, check that out. If you are a CSP, if you are a Crestron service provider, check that out and come join us on Thursday. So, but yeah, that's kind of.
I'm on vacation again that week, so.
You should come down to Dallas.
Well, I think if I come down to Dallas, my wife will let me leave and stay in Dallas. Instead, I'm going up to Canada while Matt's not there. I think is the better plan.
Probably best. Yeah, you could just go to AMX and write it off.
Vacation with the wife. You guys really did hit your head.
All right. Okay, so we started this episode 213, and kind of a somewhat of a not a lark, but we had gotten a couple questions on some of our different back and forths, and we said, you know what, let's answer some questions. Let's do that. So first question is this, and Bradford, we'll start with you. I'm going to chime in on this, but give it to you guys first to run with it. So the question is, where should integrators draw the line for intellectual property when it comes to control code? Does the customer own the code, or does the integrator? Or is it a definition of who owns the module? This is assuming you're modularizing your code. Can a price be associated with providing the customer with complete uncompiled control code, including the modules? How should an integrator assess that kind of cost to the customer? Mr. Benn, you are not a control programmer, but you do work for Harman, who owns AMX. So let's start with you, and let's kind of go down here. What is the thinking? You can give me your personal opinion as a former integrator or AMX by Harman's.
So I'm going to start with my personal feelings, and also I'm going to do that disclaimer because I was raised by the modern equivalent of wolves. I'm not a lawyer. So obviously check with your lawyer when you're doing this, but there is a definite difference of, are you licensing the module to be used or the code to be used at one site, or are you creating a work for hire? And there's a huge difference legally into who owns that intellectual property. It's kind of like if you're working for a company and you develop something cool, like say the 3M Post-it note, do they own that, or do you own it because you did it in your spare time? And it's kind of in that same vein. In my opinion, the licensing versus ownership also comes down to what your warranty is. If I have to warrant the system for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I want to own that code so that if someone messes with it, I can void the warranty, or license it to that site with an end user license that says you shall not reverse compile, blah, 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 blah. But then when the warranty's up and they want the code, here you go. But then comes the other side of if they're doing, let's say it's a chain store and they're doing 50 stores, I want a residual on all 50 stores if they're going to use the same code over and over. So to be honest, I think that both sides have merit. I think if you want to lock in a customer for life, you own the code and license it to them. However, that also means that if you go bankrupt, if you have a falling out with the customer is sitting there in the lurch. So I think it's just something that has to be negotiated. When I was an integrator, we licensed it. You did not own it unless you paid more to own it. And part of that was because it was part of it was to lower the price because we could reuse the modules and reuse the R&D.
Yeah.
And part of it was that 50 store issue of the, oh, you've used this in one store, you have to pay us a royalty when you use it on the next store. Now, having said that, you look at something like RMS from AMX, you can buy the server or you can license the service. Same thing. We give you the option as a provider, which one makes more sense for you. And part of this comes out to which one's better for your customer. I've done projects when I was an integrator where the restaurant wanted to license it because of the high failure rates of restaurants. They didn't have the money to pay to own it. And obviously paying to own it is going to cost more than licensing it. That goes without saying. So that's a big difference. The other thing to consider is, what is your cost of support going to be? As what actually started this out was Matt and I joking on our internal AVNation chat of can I charge someone extra if they're tweaking the code so that I know I'm going to have to go fix it tomorrow? At which point I went, this is going to be a great topic. So this is why we decided to take over the show. And that's actually a very big thing of, if you give them the uncompiled code, they can tweak it till it squeaks, and now you have to go fix the system.
Okay, a couple of things here. Hang on for a second, because I want to completely disagree with you, Bradford, which I don't do very often, and I do so very hesitantly because you're so much smarter than I am.
You're definitely drugged up with painkillers.
I am. So, a couple of things. First of all, nearly every control processor that I'm aware of can tell me when the last time that code was uploaded. All right. Mm-hmm. So if you keep good records, you know good and well when the last time you were out there, and you could look at the client and say, look, somebody else uploaded this. I don't care what revision you call it, right? Somebody else uploaded this code and it wasn't us. So then you put it in your contract that if somebody else messes with it in the first year or whatever, then yeah, you can charge them for it. Yep. And I would disagree with you because you made the statement that if you want to keep a client for life, you don't give them the code. I would argue the exact opposite of that. You entrust that with your client. You entrust that with your client, and if you have a good enough relationship with your client and they have the means, then they're going to call you back. Understand, I come from the land of my first few jobs in AV was in education, right? And not only, I didn't work for U of I that had, millions of dollars a year for an AV budget. I worked for a community college, right? Last year I was there, my budget for all of AV to support 180 rooms was $36,000, right? So we had to make every... Huh?
Every room got its own iPod?
Yes, every room got its own iPod. So we had to make every penny count.
And I did misstate that. I should have said keep the client for life. I should have said kept a revenue stream open, because they're going to have to relicense and resupport.
Yeah.
Also comes the thing of what happens. I see your point of the giving a good client the code. Yeah, agree. We've done that with stuff. However, the who owns it, what happens when it doesn't work when you've given the client the code starts to become a very fuzzy line of we gave you the code, you broke it, now we have to charge you to fix it?
Yeah,
or is
absolutely.
And that starts to become an interesting line to walk. I'm not saying it's an impossible line to walk. It's just something that has to be documented.
It does.
It's like any other business situation. Mm-hmm. You got to document and outline the scope of work, the expectations, the deliverables, and the schedule. And I do think that there are pluses, like you said, of yes, you can know when the code was uploaded. But that's not always great if you have to drive an hour each way.
But again, it's part of the. So first of all, that goes back to the service contracts, right? That goes back to documenting. At AVAD, we warranty our work for the first year. So if something happens or whatever, it's on us to make sure it's right and make sure it's fixed. But if there are certain provisions in there, right? I'm not going to give somebody who doesn't know what they're doing a blank check to jack around and learn what the code I'm giving them, and then us pay to have somebody go out there and fix it. Yes, if they have messed something up, again, this goes back to your documentation. It goes back to the contract. If they've messed something up, then it's on them to make it right and to pay for those changes that we have to come back and fix. Now, if we've done something wrong, and it's messed up, absolutely, it's on us.
Yeah, agreed. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah.
And I do think the subscription service is kind of what almost all industries are going to nowadays. Of the, you pay $100 a month and you get every piece of software ever made from Adobe. Sorry,
Yeah.
$50 a month. Great model. They get recurring revenue. If you license the code and say sell a support contract, you're going to have a nice revenue stream for a while. If you hand out the code and there may not be a support contract on it, it's a different model. Or if you hand out the code and deliver the code that's considered a work for hire, you're not guaranteed getting the service contract, and also your service contract costs become very different. So I see logic in both. There are some times where, you know, people have written proprietary cool whiz bangs of the example of the, I have a tool that does this and makes everyone's life easier, and you don't want to give that away. So do you give that as a compiled piece, as a module they can bring in if they're doing a work for hire, or do you charge them more? The example I use is a company like TechSpa or TechMD, where their business model is providing that programming. So that's kind of if you give it away, you don't really have much value to it, because my big thing is, if something's free, everyone takes it for granted. If you put a price of $100 on it and then discount it, you've at least given a value to what you're providing.
Let me give you an example of that, and that's I'm doing a job right now with an integrator, and we ran across they ran across Analog Way as a switcher manufacturer. Analog Way actually paid to have a module created. I believe that they've got one for Crestron and AMX both. I know for a fact they have one for Crestron because that's the one we're using. It does some really, really crazy, sick things when it comes to the interface and the. I mean, it's drag and drop, and you can resize and pinch and all this stuff. It cost them somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to have that module developed. The module itself costs $5,000 or $6,000 from Analog Way. You have a license, right? A one-use license per program for this thing. Now, is it worth it? Depends, right? It depends on the installation. It depends on what you're trying to do. You know, you're going to put it in somebody's house, Bill Gates' house, yeah, probably. You know,
no, it's all run by Zunes.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Scott, from your standpoint, and let's talk about both resi and the commercial world. You know, what do you feel when it comes to, you know, all kidding aside, and you know, if you give them the code and they screw it up, can I charge them more? But when it comes to, you know, both residential and commercial, how do you work that out with your clients?
It's a fun conversation to have, and to be honest, we're constantly evolving the way in which we're dealing with this. As you know, I continue to grow our firm, and as we learn more about, you know, the way we should be doing business and the way business is changing a little bit as the years pass. Currently with residential clients, we give or leave a copy of the source code for whatever automation we've done on site. We have in our contract stated that any unauthorized changes within or that falling under our service contract will be billed for any required maintenance, i.e., just as, you know, we've been talking about, if we have to send out a tech to fix a lighting control system or update something in remote controls or touch panels, as soon as we log in, myself or one of the techs will check that date, see the last time it's been updated. If it wasn't us, then we have to have a conversation with the client of, we are now going to see what's going on. If what you're asking for is something that we determine to have been an unauthorized change because someone's been in here, we are billing you truck roll, programming, fixing, everything that goes along with it. And it's not billed at your agreed upon service contract, it's billed at our standard rates.
Well, hang on for a second. If it's shouldn't that be a part of the service contract? I mean,
well, it's stated in our service contracts, but we still have to always go through this conversation with the client because they've forgotten, or more likely they didn't read the contract, which happens more than I would like to admit. I'm shocked how often it happens. So yeah, in that situation, if we've seen it's been tampered with, then yeah, they're billed outside of our contracted hours and our contracted rates for service, even if that's happening within the service time. Commercially, it's a little different. We still like to provide something on site, and part of the reason we do that is we kind of do that as a value add, and we sell that as a value add for us, i.e., you can like us, you can get along with us great. If 6 months down the road you decide you don't like Omega anymore, you have all your source documents. We're not going to leave you up the creek without a paddle and have an entire automation system or whatever that programming is. We're not going to leave you without access to that data, because again, the way we view it, and part of this comes down to the project sizes that we're doing. But we feel that they've paid for us to do this. They're not paying us to write custom modules. That's not something we get into because we're not really a programming house in that way. So we're providing solutions and systems that should be turnkey out the door, and we like to leave them with that software. Again, if it's adjusted or modified within our service contract, that's going to have another conversation. But that way, they're comfortable going forward, and especially if they've worked with other integrators that don't do this. If they've been burnt once or multiple times before with remotes or full systems where they don't have the code on site and they need something changed and they can't either get a hold of the previous integrator or they've closed down or whatever that situation is, they are very quick to hire us, knowing that we are going to leave them with a copy
But that's a
of
value
the
add.
most updated code. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a value add. It's worked well for us.
And I will say that this issue isn't just a audio, video, lighting control issue.
No.
Right now, there are people who are saying that you don't own the code that's running your John Deere tractor or your GM car or
Right.
all these other things. So you can't hook into the onboard diagnostics. So it is a big thing with the Internet of Things going on as to who owns that. Now, I do see the games of when do you turn over the code? Do you wait till the service contract is up? Do you wait till retainage is paid after a year? There are games like that. And like I said, a lot of it is you negotiated ahead of time.
We wait till the contract's paid.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense.
Well,
And-
yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. One thing I would say is this: we've had this conversation before. Steve Greenblatt and I on State of Control dedicated, I think, 2 episodes of this. He and I have done a webinar with Commercial Integrator on this very subject. Actually, he and I are doing another one next week, week after next, the 30th, on just control in general. But this is something that lawyers have weighed in on years ago. Depending on which control manufacturer you were talking to, they had it where nobody got the code, right? Good Lord, there was a time when the control manufacturers wrote the code themselves, right? There weren't these independent programmer types. They did everything themselves from wherever they were, and they sent out a tech and this, that, and the other. So I think Bradford's right. We're getting into an area where software licenses and rights and intellectual property is all kind of coming together, and it's getting very interesting.
Let me ask this question.
Shoot.
Kind of frame it a different way. So if you buy or hire someone to make music for you, like let's say you want someone to go in and write a theme for AVNation.
Okay.
Do you own the finished part, or do you own all the stems that go into it and all the sources?
I own the finished part.
So you don't own the base code, you own the music that was delivered to you?
Yes.
Do you own the score?
Depends on your contract.
Yeah.
See, this is exactly the same thing it becomes a very slippery slope, and it's all down to what you define to do. And like I said, there isn't a right answer. There isn't a one size fits all. There are some projects where the control system is more complex than the user's used to, and maybe it's worth not giving them the base code. There are other projects where the relationship with the customers are such that they get the base code and they understand they break it, they got to fix it. And there are other customers where you're like, nope, I'm locking everything down and all you have is this one knob. It literally, in my opinion, is a project by project, customer by customer decision.
I could see that. I mean, again, understand I come from education, and my first experience with control and code was an integrator, and I will not name the integrator, charged me $1,000 to switch out the code for a projector. And at the time, I didn't know any better. Now, after I learned how to program, and after I learned, it soured me on that program, on that integrator, because in essence,
why.
huh?
And I can understand why.
Yeah, they charged me $1,000 for probably 15 minutes worth of work.
Right. There's an onerous amount and a fair amount. If they had charged you $100 for that, you probably would have been like, okay, fine. They've troubleshot it. They tested
Exactly.
it. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that's always a problem, is what is the price? But I think if you just give the code away, the code loses its value. To quote George Tucker in one of his posts, it's the virus of free. So by having it, that you've put a price to it, and you want to own the code, it's going to cost you an extra blah. And at the same time, the service contract should be written that, if we need to update because of product obsolescence, that we're going to charge you X dollars for a module. I think it's like anything else. You get what you negotiate, not what you deserve.
Okay, I can give you that. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't have enough information to negotiate that. So, one thing, and this kind of goes back to Vin a little bit. Bradford, one of the things that I've got interesting, I guess, is about a month or so ago, Rashid from AMX stepped down. They've also lost Joe Andrulis, great marketing guy from AMX. And so Harman in general is kind of going through a shift, I guess is the best way to put it. And I don't want to say the wrong word, because I get the reorg and the restructure confused. Okay. Probably because I'm drugged too. But give me the official word from them and kind of what you guys are doing and what you guys are up to.
Okay. So officially we're reorganizing. Restructuring scares.
See, you even got it screwed up.
Yeah, we're reorganizing. What we're doing actually is getting to a more system-focused and customer-focused model. Obviously, we've been successful. They've been able to keep me gainfully employed, and I'm definitely a high-maintenance person.
Yes, you are.
We've done a lot of good acquisitions. We've grown a lot, but what's happened is we're no longer capable of supporting the same system of, and this I'll use Matt as a perfect example, or Innovat as an example. If you are designing a project, do you want to call person A for loudspeakers, person B for amplifiers, person C for DSP, person D for consoles, person E for lighting, and person F for control systems? No, you want a Harman system. So what we're doing is we're organizing our people internally to kind of go through the process of facing the customer better, making it easier, so that you can call up and go, hey, I'm working on this house of worship, and you'll get someone who understands house of worship, how it works, and be able to talk with you in the proper language. Because if you say to me Narthex, I go, what? But if you say this to that same person, Dark Ride, they go, what? And I go, oh, it's a Dark Ride. It's built inside of a building. It has 16 turns. This is the model. So we're trying to position that. The other thing that we're doing is centralizing our internal functions to take advantage of scale. There were some basic things that you've probably heard me ranting and raving about, like accounting all being in one. So like my expense reports go outside my building, but it makes a lot of sense. Instead of having every building have someone looking at your expense reports, put it all in one place. But there are bigger things like that with R&D and purchasing being put together. So it allows us to do things such as, you're developing a Flugel, and I'm developing a Google. Let's put the Flugel and the Google together and make a Hoogle that works for both of us and comes to market faster. So it's going to help us to get growth that's going to be a lot faster. It's going to be faster to adapt to the market, but also give us the ability for, like for instance, for me, I'm working on theme parks. I know that's shocking. And I can say, this is the product I need for theme parks. And then I talk to the other market directors and go, hey, with this outside loudspeaker that covers 165 degrees, would that also work for, say, a house of worship for the outside area to play background music, or for a school to play messaging, or for a performance arts center for surround sound? And we can start leveraging all of that together by each person being well versed in their market. But basically what we're trying to do is make it easier for everyone to work with us. It used to be if you wanted to buy Martin and wanted to buy Crown and wanted to buy JBL and wanted to buy BSS, each one of those was a separate purchase order. Now you can do hey, I get to call Brad and yell at him about all this stuff, and I can take care of it for you. Now in the future, I'm going to give you Dan Sainz's phone number instead, and you can call him and yell, and I'll just be here on the podcast pontificating. So I do think it's a good thing. I think that the market itself is changing. There's more and more of a pressure on service beyond and reactions beyond just the give me a 500 watt amplifier, because lots of people make 500 watt amplifiers. Lots of people program control systems. Why do I hire Matt instead of Tim? Why do I hire Tim
I'm better
instead
than
of
Matt,
or instead of George Tucker? And we're trying to react to that effectively. I think it's a very good move. I think it's going to watch us become a much more agile company, because up until recently it's been like steering a behemoth. You move a battleship very slowly, and now it's going to be we have this issue, we need to deal with it. And there are other things like you call service, they know about all the products, not just their one brand. So I think it's a good thing. I do think we're going to see this happening more and more in the industry, mainly because it does make life easier for you guys as the customers. As I say quite often at the office, and people usually throw stuff at me after I say it, because they say I'm spouting business talk. If we don't succeed if our customers don't succeed. So my job is to make sure the customers succeed.
Okay, so let me give you kind of a devil's advocate here, and we had a couple questions from Big Nate that from Shop Talk that we're going to get to here in a second. And if you have any questions, you can put them up on the Google Hangout question and answer area.
Well, I guess I should look at that.
You should probably look at that, yeah.
This thing's smarter than me.
It's not smarter than you. You're awfully smart. But here's the thing, Bradford. I understand the whole, one person to blame, one person to call thing. But and I want to get Matt on here once I have this say. But there's also the old adage of putting all of your eggs in one basket. Right. I mean, what if I don't like JBL speakers? I'm not saying I don't. I'm just saying, let's say that I've been an AMX customer for years. I love, their stuff. I've got, I came on board when they bought Auto Patch and this, that, and the other. The Madero touch panels are really sexy and groovy. Don't have a problem with this, that, and the other, and what have you. But I just really don't like JBL speakers.
I understand that.
Okay.
So the thing I usually say, and this is where I am, you're going to say, yep, I sound like a car salesman. What's it going to take to get an audio system today? We got to earn your business. If you tell me you don't like JBL, I'm still going to try I'm going to ask you why. But I'm also not going to say, well, if you're not buying the loudspeakers, you can't buy the amplifiers, you can't buy the control system. We still have to earn your business in each and every decision you make. So the idea, though, being is that we come up with a system where the part or the sum is greater than the parts. So if you put a JBL loudspeaker in with BSS processing, it's perhaps tuned a little better than if you put a BSS processor in with an EV speaker or a Fulcrum speaker, and vice versa. And it's kind of make the stuff work better together in general. But we have to still earn the business. And I go through this every day well, I want to use this, but I like this brand better. And my answer is I go through that and go, okay, let's figure out how to work together. And all of us are very much, like I said, if the customer doesn't succeed, we don't succeed. Yeah. So if you want to use, the this other brand of amplifier, but we can still sell you the processing and the loudspeakers, we're going to do it. And that's kind of the model that I think everyone's going to is, yes, we want to get everything. I'm not going to apologize for that. I show up at work on Monday morning because they give me money, and we make money by selling stuff. It's pretty much the same as why you charge to write code. But we still have to earn the business in each and every business unit. Right. Now, do I think we work better together? Yeah. Do I think we have some leverage? Yeah. But if you don't like it, it's our fault that we haven't made a compelling story. We still need to work with you. Am I going to give you the same level of support if you bought 4 out of the 5 brands? Probably. But if you bought, one in the middle and then blame everything on me and not that other brand, it gets a little more awkward.
Okay, so let me give you the other side of this from the integrator standpoint.
Okay.
If I buy, let's say that go back to your example of there being 5 components. If I buy all 5, what is the incentive if I'm giving you a business that I normally wouldn't? And let's go back to JBL. For example, let's say that I normally wouldn't buy JBL. I would buy brand X's or brand Y speakers. And I say, you know what, Bradford, I'm going to give you a shot, right? We're going to keep everything in Harmon's area. What is the incentive for me? Are there, do I get breaks? Is there, buy 4, get 1 free deal? Buy 4 components here and I get the 5th part here. I mean, is there, or is it just goes back to the one PO?
This is where it starts to get fun because every project's different.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously if you buy a stadium's worth of millions of dollars of product, it's going to be a different discount structure than if you buy thousands of dollars of product. But there is some leveraging of buying multiple brands, buying multiple products. We're able to do some leverage on that. So that comes in quite a bit of the, hey, let's do this. But it also comes in the other side of pre-sale support and post-sale support of the, say, for instance, you're working for the first time with JBL loudspeakers and you need a little bit of help. And we have acoustic applications experts who can run basic ease models for you. Not to replace a consultant, but just to kind of, yes, we've vetted this design. The VTX is the right loudspeaker, and the VTX 20 with these amplifiers are right. And because we've helped you with it, we'll stand by it. So we still try to provide that extra level of support because now that's the whole system. We can do I know this loudspeaker works with this amplifier, works with this DSP, works with this console, works with this, wireless microphone system, works with this Martin lighting console, which can all be controlled by one AMX touch panel, so I can sit at home and go unmute on Sunday morning. So that that falls to us to make the sum of the parts as big as we can, make the sum of the whole better than the parts. But yeah, if you don't like a brand, it's still our responsibility to work through why. And if you need additional help because it's the first time you're doing it, we have those options. I think every manufacturer's getting into that.
Yeah, Matt, from your standpoint, and a more residential and light commercial and house of worship, does it make you how does it make you feel to have everything under one roof and going to one brand or one overarching brand for everything?
I see no problem with it whatsoever. It's one of those things. Everyone is trying to create that complete solution. And it's, as integrators, it's our job to know when that actually is the complete solution and when we need to modify that solution and add additional parts and pieces where they fit and where they're needed. And, with Harman, we use tons of JBL stuff and we use a lot of the DBX stuff, and that's about what we do with it. We spec a little bit of Martin when we're playing around in the lighting space, but that's not really our big part of the the industry. So for us, it's one of those things where we're perfectly happy when it's under one roof, and it does make life simpler, especially for the smaller integrators like myself. If I've got one manufacturer to go to or one supplier to go to, it sure makes life just dramatically better than having to call up 4 or 5 individual either companies or manufacturer reps or salespeople. If I can call one person and get most of my project done and out the door, that's what I'm going to do. There's nothing worse than, again, as a smaller integrator, having to call 14 or 15 different people to make one project happen.
All right, that makes sense.
And I will assuage some of your fears, Tim, just because I know I've gotten this question quite a bit. We still make modules and release tunings for other brands. So you can buy a JBL loudspeaker and still find a tuning that goes into another speaker processor. You can buy an AMX controller and still control another brand, like say Biamp's teleconferencing system. We're not. Yes, we want to provide a complete system, but we realize we're not going to have the answers all the time.
All right,
Do we want
that's
to get the answers you need all the time? Yeah, and this new model is going to allow us to be more responsive to that. So we're not. And Crestron's doing the same thing. Any manufacturer in their right will typically do yes, we might not get everything, we want to get some of it and still support you.
all right. And you're right. I mean, everybody is doing it, and I'm not fearful. Don't misunderstand. I'm just trying to think through, and you've got with everybody that Harman purchases, you're going to have some of those fears because SVSI is a great example because you've got people who may or may not have been AMX dealers or may or may not have been JBL dealers who suddenly are somewhere in that nether region where they sold SVSI, and suddenly now they're attached to Harman, and kind of walking through that process, I'm sure is interesting. As an
It's been
integrator.
over a year of walking through this process. It's not fast because you want to look at every dealer on their own merits.
Yeah. All right. Real quickly, we got a question from Big Nate, and it actually relates back to the question about the code. Apparently, Massachusetts has a bill, House Bill 3383. It is an act relative to the digital rights to repair. And this, reading some of this, the current bill text, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Authorized repair provider, an oral or written arrangement for a definite or indefinite period in which a manufacturer or distributor transfers to a separate business organization or individual licensed to use a trade name, service mark, or relative characteristic for the purposes of offering repair services under the name of the manufacturer. The digital electronic product, a part or machine containing a microprocessor originally manufactured for distribution and sale in the United States. So you go on to read this sucker, and basically it's saying that you've got to be fair and reasonable when you put in some of these software, and there are some other things about costs and terms and stuff like that. Bradford, is this something where it's more of a localized state? Obviously, in this case, it's a state law, but is this something that the federal government should take a look at when it comes to making laws about software and licenses?
Okay, so now I get to get on my soapbox.
That's
'Cause
fine.
I am a proud member of the EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is actually pushing for a lot of this around the country. And it starts to get interesting once I buy it, am I allowed to do with it whatever I want? Kind of thing. I think that this bill is more addressed at fair business of that I can't, as a manufacturer, say, you're not allowed to repair this, you have to send it back to the shop. And they're trying to stop some of that, which I think is very, very useful, because if you have to send something back to the shop every time, it becomes tiresome. It comes down to, like I said, who owns the code. I think it's a very important thing that we have to define. There have been times where people like Sony have said, no, you don't own the PlayStation. You can't hack it and tweak it to be your own stuff. You actually have to go in and follow what we do. You own a license to this software and this hardware. You don't actually own the hardware. So I do think it's very important that we start setting out some of these rights and explaining what's allowed and what's not allowed. We are allowed to, for security reasons, according to this, can exclude diagnostic service and repair. So that way you can't go in and do security hacks and bypass stuff, which to some degree becomes an issue I'll use an amplifier as a prime example. If you go in and tweak the amplifier so it can now put out 12,500 watts instead of just 12,000 watts, and you blow a loudspeaker, whose fault?
It's your
And that
fault.
comes down to, why is it my fault?
Cause you made it,
Exactly, but you guys tweaked the code.
and your name is on the front of it.
But you tweaked the code.
But your name's on the front of it.
And this, I think this is
Very different.
And I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but that's the mentality a lot of times.
Right.
Yeah,
And
this is hitting a much bigger social issue where we seem to think as a society anymore that we can go and do whatever we feel is our right to do it, and then we can, for example, blame the amplifier manufacturer after we screwed around inside of it.
Yep.
There's something to be said for
parts.
yeah, there's something to be said for back in the day when every piece of electronics you bought had stickers on it that if you tore it, everything was void.
Yes.
But we've got to the point where we seem to think that, and this is what started our entire conversation about this a couple of weeks ago. I had a client who was convinced that in the middle of a project, he should use the software he downloaded from the internet to go and tweak some code on the automation on his house, because we couldn't get there on a Sunday afternoon to do something he was convinced needed to be done right then and there. He sent me a couple texts during that afternoon saying, "Ooh, I want to do this. I want to do this. I can't do this." To which I responded, "Yeah, we'll be there on Monday like we said we would on Friday. You don't need to do this right now. You'll be okay." He went in, screwed a bunch of stuff up, added 3 hours to our day on Monday, fixing the code that he jacked up.
It is a very interesting game.
And we had that conversation on Monday when I showed up of, okay, so now that we've looked at this, either we reload it with ours back from Friday, or we tweak and fix what you've messed around with.
And to be honest, Matt, I would just go back to Friday.
Yeah, I would too.
That's what your warranty and support is from.
Exactly. So we looked at it, we had that conversation, we went back to Fridays and went from there. And as soon as, and it was one of those situations where I had one of the guys downstairs working on the rack, I was upstairs programming on site with the homeowner sitting beside me watching what I was doing.
You charged extra for that.
You charge
right?
extra for that,
I
yeah.
totally did. And we had this conversation about, I understand you want to play with this. I understand you think you can do this, and that's great, but you hired us because you can't do this. There's a reason for that. So if you want to mess around with it, go to town. You own all this equipment. It's your house. Do whatever you want, but realize that as soon as you touch it, if you cause extra work for us, we're going to bill you for it.
Yeah.
And I perfectly agree with that, both from a manufacturer standpoint and a personal standpoint. It's kind of like, to me, if I messed the operating system on my computer and I go format C: or reinstall OS, I've now rolled it back and it should work under that situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if it doesn't work under that situation, now I'm going to have a much more different. Yeah, I talk good.
Sure.
I was learned real good. A much different conversation with the Apple geniuses. And for those of you who aren't watching the YouTubes because of net neutrality stream, throttling back the video streaming. Thank you, Mr. Shrago. The Apple geniuses were in air quotes.
Quote unquote. All right, gentlemen. That, I think we've answered enough questions for the day. At least that's the hour. So, Mr. Matt D. Scott, thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on the interwebs on Twitter at Matt D. Scott, or pretty much anywhere using that name or Omega Audio Video.
Very good. And Mr. Bradford Benn, thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you for letting me take over.
Absolutely.
Sorry your arm is bustimacated.
Me too.
People can find me at Bradford Benn at most social medias. You can find me at work at bradford.ben@harman.com. Always like talking to listeners. You can also find me, on the Twitter with more inane comments, wishing everyone a nice day. Since it is Friday, September 18th, everyone should have a nice day.
And be nice to each other.
Speaking of nice days, isn't our friend Hope doing something cool?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Hope Roth, also known as @Beer and Pie on the Twitters.
Yes.
is going in, and she is raising money for the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth, also known as CHAD. And if we raise enough money, she will allow us to vote on what superheroine, hero, take your pick costume she will run in. And if someone donates over $1,000, she will run dressed up as Kitty Purry, where she will actually run in a huge cat head dressed up like Katy Perry.
Wow.
So you can go. You can find that at chad.donordrive.com and just search for Hope Roth. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to send the link to Mr. Albright so we can put it in the show notes because he's nice like that.
I am indeed.
And, we should support Hope. It's a great thing. As I say, always be nice to kids whether they deserve it or not, because it might be the parents' fault.
That's true. And Hope is absolutely great, and she's a fabulously talented programmer and just a good person all around. So,
and she just became an IBW brother, sister, person.
Yes.
So, and to quote her, she's very proud. She had her first 3-way light switch installed. So, it's a good thing.
It is a good thing. All right. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me, but go by the website if you would, please. These two gentlemen right here are completely responsible for the website, AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. Have a brand new EdTech coming down the pipeline. Have a new Women in AV podcast with our buddy Jennifer Willard coming down the pipeline. New State of Control. And George and the guys at the lighting show are revamping that, so that's coming down. And somebody said something about a new AV apps show coming down the pipeline as well. Apparently having a brand new baby kind of screws with your schedule. I wouldn't know anything about that. So avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Check that out. Subscribe to our newsletter. That's on there as well. And let Bradford and Matt know how well they did. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.